Savvy Central Radio, drawing out the best from our guest, with your host, Christina Nitchman.
This is your host, Christina Nitchman. Each week, Savvy runs weekly broadcasts providing entrepreneurs and successful individuals a platform to express their dreams, hopes, lessons learned, expertise, and wisdom with the world. Our guest today is Sarah M. Johnson. Sarah believes that adversity is the gateway for change, and that through the difficult times of sorrow, loss, depression, anxiety, relationship issues, trauma, disease, or any mental illness, we can use this adversity to self-explore and change for the better. Today, Sarah shares her new book, Life is Beautiful, an autobiographical book about her harrowing journey at 19, losing half her family in an airplane crash. This loss turned into her greatest opportunity for self-growth and healing. Find out more about Sarah and get her new book today at lifeisbeautifulbook.com. Hi, Sarah. Welcome to Savvy Central Radio. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing fabulous today, and I'm so happy to have you on today. Girl, I was just telling you before we got started that I came across your book on LinkedIn. Your wonderful publisher, Kelsey, had published a link on LinkedIn of your book, and I saw the title and the cover, and it jumped out at me. It has a picture of an airplane on it, and I love airplanes, and it said, "Life is Beautiful, How a Lost Girl Became a True Confident Child of God." And of course, I love airplanes. I love God, so it just popped out at me. Tell us more about how you came to writing your autobiographical book and your whole journey.
Well, sure. First of all, I experienced a horrible airplane crash in 2008 in the mountains of Guatemala. Me and my family were doing missions work there, and my father had planned this amazing trip for us to spend some time together and also learn about a different culture and learn about different people and really essentially learn, about ourselves. However, in the middle of, this new journey that we're about to explore as a family, our airplane has unexpected engine problems and we have engine failure and we actually crash in the mountains of Guatemala in a remote village. There was 14 passengers on board and 11 passengers died, including my father and my brother. And my mother was severely burned and another gentleman had escaped the crash as well. And I just walked out of the airplane with no injuries. Nothing happened to me. So the very beginning of this experience that I'd experienced, I just knew that I had to share my story because I believed at the time that I survived, and I survived for a reason. And I knew that a book was in my future, and it was a way for me to, write therapeutically for myself, but to also share my story of trauma, loss, and resiliency that in a very difficult, tragedy, death, especially the loss of loved ones. My family was made up of a family of 4, and here, half my family is gone in literally a blink of an eye. Yeah. I needed to write about it. I mean, it was therapeutic for me, and I had to tell people about it.
Yeah. And what I really love about it is that I think often we feel like life is forever. I mean, that's often how we live. I've heard people say, well, if you had and you knew that tomorrow you will not be here, how would you live today? Because often we don't live like we'll not be here tomorrow. We live like we have all the time in the world, our family and everyone else, that we could say I love you to my dad or to my loved one tomorrow because we have tomorrow, but it's not promised. We don't know if either of us will be here tomorrow.
Well, that's right. Yeah. And it came when I was 19 years old. And I mean, death was honestly the furthest thing from my mind. I mean, you're very naive, I think, at that time. And for it to come so suddenly, it was very surreal for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I recall in your book that a number of people kept telling you early on when that first happened that God spared you for a reason and that's why you're here. And I'm sure it wasn't pleasant to hear that. It's like, I don't care about that. I mean, how did that how did you take that at that moment when people kept telling you, well, you're here for a reason, that's why you weren't harmed?
Well, I took it, I had two different responses to it. First, I had severe survivor's guilt.
Mm.
I really felt horrible that I had survived. Simply because my brother, he was younger than I was, and for a long time I really struggled with, I kind of wish that it was me and not my brother.
Mm.
Who would he be today?
Yeah.
And then another, kind of on the total opposite spectrum of that was, maybe I did survive for a reason. And when people would tell me that, it would give me a glimpse of hope because during that time, it was a very difficult time for me. So people were planting seeds of hope for me.
Yeah.
And I was able to focus more on maybe I did survive for a reason, which took away from the survivor's guilt that I really did experience.
Yeah. And what was very interesting, of course, and because like we talked about before the interview, that life is an ongoing journey. It's not like you one day reach that state of happiness or completion. It's a constant ongoing journey to evolve and become your greater self each day. And before the accident even happened, there were some turmoil in your life and difficulty that you were working through. So this didn't make it much easier, did it?
No, not at all, especially because I had just failed out of my first freshman year of college and had just recently come to my father, saying that I have a problem with alcohol and I'm depressed and I have never felt this way in my entire life. Dad, what's wrong with me? And he says, well, why don't you come to Guatemala? We'll try to figure this out as a family, So here I am going through this very difficult time in my life to begin with because I didn't know what depression was. But when I went off to college, I don't know. Maybe I didn't have skills to survive on my own. I don't know why I got so depressed, but I did. And I turned to alcohol and it became manageable for me drinking. However, of course, there's consequences to that, which is, failing out of your first year of college, and I was lying. I was one person, one way to certain people, but deep have this secret. So going to Guatemala was going to be a new opportunity for me to start my life over at 19 because I had just made a mess of the prior year. So.
Yeah, and I'm guessing this is you're not the only person who's had issues like that. I just talked to someone earlier today who said there's a huge uprise of students, high school and college, committing suicide because of overwhelm and stress. And so it's horrible for anyone who might be going through what you went through and feeling they're not enough or I can't do this. What would be your advice to a young teen or a young adult out there?
Well, honestly, I believe that, a piece of advice is that things will definitely get better for you. It's a personal choice. Yeah. If you want your life to get better, it will. You just have to learn to reach out. And I think reaching out for, if it's suicide prevention, if someone's feeling so depressed that they feel like there's no other way out, reaching out for help because people want to help. And that's what got me better was not only was it my faith in God and that maybe I did survive for a reason, but I reached out. Actually, people reached out to me.
Yeah.
Me taking their hand and saying, yes, I really do need help. And that would probably be my biggest piece of advice is there are resources and people who need to take advantage of them really need to make that choice because life can get better.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I know in my early 20s, I think it's same for a lot of people in their early 20s. You don't really have your identity totally formed yet. And myself, I was out on my own and it's just really, really hard. And it seems at those times that it will never get better. It's just, and it's remembering that it's just temporary.
Oh, it is temporary because when you're in that turmoil, though, you feel like there's a big black cloud over you and that you cannot get out. But reaching for help, I think, is honestly the best thing that especially a young child can do. Yeah. Before 25, 25, your brain's, just now developing. So realizing that this is temporary, I reach out, things can and will get better.
Yeah, absolutely. And through all of the experiences you had before when you were in college and having difficulty, even with the crash, and then going forward, reestablishing and going through the transition, do you feel that all of the events of your life have made you a better person and shaped your faith with God?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I don't feel guilty saying this anymore, but
Mm,
I believe that, well, let me just quick back up a little bit. First of all, I don't believe that God would ever give me anything that I cannot handle.
mhm,
And at the time, I really did ask why. Why did this happen to me? God, why did you do this to me? How could you take away my dad and my brother?
mm,
How could you allow my mother to suffer burns 65% of her body?
mm,
How could you do that? How could you let these the other victims of the crash, they
mm,
were parents, they were, brother and sister, they had children. How could you take away life? I was
mm.
I struggled with that. And then you just leave me hanging?
Yeah,
God, how am I supposed to deal with this?
yeah.
But through all that adversity, there's always hope.
Mm,
And I believe that adversity builds hope. And through all the bad and hurtful obstacles I have personally faced, I know that I'm better because of it. I have compassion and I have love for other people.
mm,
And I believe when you have compassion and love for other people, you can truly connect to them. And that's what I want to do.
mm,
I want to use my obstacles and my hurt to truly connect
mm.
with other people
Yeah.
and bring love and just establish new relationships and relate to people and have conversation. And
Mm.
I think that's how the world can really be a better place, is when we can truly connect with other people.
Yeah, absolutely, Sarah. And what's really intrigues me about what you just said is that it doesn't even have to be a life-altering event in your life that you can bring great gifts to others. It can be that any part of your life that you go through, whether it's just going through college and getting your master's degree, or in my case, early on in my early 20s, I was volunteering, helping out kids with disabilities. And you think, well, what does that have to do with helping my life or helping others? I mean, I'm helping those kids. But what I found is that doing that helped me increase skills and help me in other parts of my life connect better with people. And here's a really cool thing, Sarah, is that by working with kids who had disabilities and stuff, I began to see that there's different ways of being and that all of them have value. I think that was the greatest lesson I learned.
Yes.
Yeah. So from all of your experiences that you went through college and then afterward, what would you say is your one greatest takeaway or lesson that you learned?
Well, let's see. Immediately following my airplane crash, I was laying in bed and I was watching a show by Martin Lawrence. He's a
Mm-hmm.
comedian. I was watching his stand up one night, and he had said, and I quote, "Nobody is immune to the trials and tribulations of life." And of course, I am just, I'm like in the middle of my depression and surrealness of my tragedy. And when he said that to me, it has stuck with me ever since,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the one thing that I've taken away, is that no matter how great people's life can look on the outside, no matter how much money you have, no matter how wonderful your marriage is, no matter how beautiful you are, your job, what be it, nobody is immune to the trials and tribulations of life.
Mm-hmm.
And it has taken me a personal choice to want to overcome the trials and tribulations
Mm-hmm.
that life has thrown at me. And because of that, I believe, and I've taken away from my entire experience, that if you do not do the work, attempt to start life over after a trial or tribulation, you will miss the opportunity to see that life is beautiful.
Wow. It's amazing because you don't realize, as we said earlier, that when you're going through whatever event or difficulty in your life, any trial or tribulation, it can seem at that very moment, no matter what it is, that it'll be forever, that it won't end. And of course, we know through other trials in our life that things do come to completion, things get better. What would you say to someone at this very moment? They're going through the biggest trial in their life and they can't decide, figure out where to get help from. they're just totally stuck. What would you tell them, or what would be your advice for them to start? Because it can be a hard thing to reach out to someone when you don't even know who to reach out to sometimes.
hmm I think accepting and acknowledging that you're in a bad spot. I
Mm.
think that is like the very first thing that you must do. I am, almost saying to yourself, I am not well. I am not happy with my life. I'm yearning for something different, and acknowledging that you want something different for yourself and accepting the fact that you have the power
Mm.
to move forward with your life, I think is the first step. I think a lot of people, maybe feel as though,
Mm.
life throws lemons at them and they just don't know what to do with it,
Mm.
or they're the victim. But we have so much power over our life. And I want everybody to know that they are so powerful.
Mm.
And once again, if they're going through a difficult time, reach out for help.
Yeah.
Because that's the first step.
Yeah. And I like that you mentioned acceptance, because I don't think that often gets paid attention to, that before you can go anywhere, you have to really state, where are you now? Accept it. And then also, I've had problems with this. I don't know if you have, really not fight against it, not resist it. I call it surrender, and not surrender meaning, oh, I give up to it, I'm just going to let it be, but not being a victim and resisting against it, saying, okay, it's here. This is what I'm going through. I'm not going to fight it anymore. Let's go through it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We have to accept that we are not happy.
Right.
I mean, and that's really what it is. I mean, it's accepting that who knows what, who knows, for me, it was accepting the fact that A, I'm really depressed, B, I have a really big drinking problem, and C, I have no idea what to do with this loss that I'm going through. I mean, I was literally a lost puppy. My mother was in the hospital for almost 6 months. My father and brother are now, dead. And I'm 19 years old, and my house is in Wisconsin. And my mom is, in the hospital in Minnesota. I had no clue what to do. But the very first of me, getting better is, okay, I need, at least someone did reach out to me because they noticed I was, I used the word sick because I was very sick, noticing and me accepting their help, me accepting the fact that I have just went through a very traumatic experience, and that it's okay to be sick. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to question God's intentions. It's okay.
Yeah.
And I think that acceptance is what really got me to where I am today.
Yeah.
It's okay to struggle. I mean, gosh, life would, what would life be if nobody struggled? I mean, strongest people, I think, are the people who have struggled the most. So,
Yeah. And if you think about it, if we were all tremendously, or I should say happy, but if everything was going like cherries in a bowl and everything was absolutely perfect, but we even acknowledge it, it would become so the same that we probably couldn't even notice how awesome everything is, unless we have a bit of not so awesome sometimes.
Right. Perfect utopia.
Yeah, exactly. But in your book, you had some amazing role models that really helped you out of your turmoil into transformation. Tell us a little bit about some of your role models that really propelled you forward on your path to self-healing and growth.
Yeah, the first person in my life was really Pauline Boss. She's a character in the book, obviously, and she was my grief and trauma therapist who was introduced to me by a nurse, and she really was a woman who took me under her wing. She really genuinely cared about me. She respected space when it came to me, actually talking about, my accident and all that stuff. But she really believed in me when I didn't even believe in myself, because I had just failed out, before my airplane crash, I had just failed out of college. So my self-esteem was, not, I mean, I had very low self-esteem and I was still very depressed. So the fact that Pauline Boss believed in me really planted the seed for me to start believing in myself and what I was truly capable of.
That's tremendous. I think I heard someone say once that he was really down and out, and he had worked with a mentor that said, you know what, I know you can't believe in yourself right now, but can you believe that I believe in you, and use that as kind of, your stepping stone forward? And he said, yeah, I can do that. And I think that's what we really need sometimes, is that role model, someone to believe in us even when we're not in that space where we can do it ourselves.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I like that you also mentioned how much space she gave you, because you did mention in the book that a lot of people were like, hey, tell me all the gory details. And you're like, hello, I'm 19 going through a heck of a time right now. Could you, focus on how I'm feeling? Because that was something that touched on me, that people were really not focused on you. It's like, oh, you're alive, you're fine, you're well. But they didn't ask you, like, how are you doing?
Yeah, I think it's because, and I think, there's a difference between physical injuries and then emotional injuries. And I really did I really did go into survival mode as well, where people would, how are you? Oh, I'm fine. But deep down, I had a hard time once again accepting the fact that I wasn't okay because I did not have physical injuries.
Also, to keep in mind that just because you don't have outside injuries or physical trauma does not mean you're not going through pain or trials or tribulations. I think sometimes if we don't see it physically, it doesn't exist. And a perfect example, a couple of years ago, someone I know is going through a great deal of difficulty, but it was all psychological. So her friends were like, oh, it's in your head, you don't have any problems, because she wasn't physically manifesting something. But just because it's not physical doesn't mean it's not real.
Right. And mental illness is, obviously we know today with the news and what's going on in the world that, mental illness is very serious. And I want to go into the mental health field for this very particular reason.
Yeah. And was it your whole life's journey and transformation that really led you to wanting to go that direction?
Oh, definitely. Yes. Yeah. It was Pauline Boss, the person I looked up to, that I'm like, I want to do what you do. I put her on such a pedestal. She really inspired me to want to change my life around. And I don't, you can't give all the credit to the therapist, because now I'm going to be a therapist, so I can't do that. But I really, really wanted to be someone to change people's life, because I felt like she really planted seeds within me to want me to change my life. And she just really guided me on that journey. And that's what I want to do. I want to guide people on their healing journeys.
Wow. This recalls for me, there was this, he's a man now, but when he was a boy, he ended up in the hospital and had a number of traumatic surgeries done because he had become sick as a young boy. And it really inspired him through that journey of some of the wonderful doctors that were very nurturing and kind to him in the hospital, that he wanted to go and practice medicine. So things are not random. And it seems sometimes the trials or tribulations, or even things we do in our life that don't seem relevant, are actually some of the biggest stepping stones to our greatest passion and our purpose.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, so tell people where they can find out more about you and get a copy of your awesome book, Life is Beautiful.
For more information about me and my book, people can go to my website, which is www.lifeisbeautifulbook.com. My book currently right now, it's available for purchase on my website and Amazon.
Fabulous. And I'm pretty sure by the time this interview hits that it will be live. But if it's not, when anyone hears it, you can still get your copy. And if it is out, go get your copy immediately, because it was a tremendous story that can give great inspiration to anyone out there, no matter where you are in your life. If everything's going awesome or if everything's a bit turmoil and difficult for you, it'll give you the juice to reflect back and realize, what am I here for? What is my great purpose? And not to give up hope.
Exactly.
Yay! Well, I want to thank you again, Sarah, for coming to share your wisdom and gifts today with our savvy audience. Before we head out, is there any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners?
Yeah, life is beautiful. That's all I have to say. And thank you so much for this opportunity. I really appreciate your time and willingness for me to come on and share my story.
You betcha, Sarah. It was a wonderful chat. Thank you so much for coming to Savvy Central Radio.
Thank you. Bye.
Join our mailing list today by texting Savvy Radio to find out about upcoming guests and events and receive a free gift, how podcasting can help increase sales and influence in your business.
Savvy Central Radio is home to over 100,000 listeners per month globally and runs in syndication on 8 AM and FM platforms, including iHeartRadio and 6 podcasting platforms. To find out more about our paid sponsorship opportunities or to become a guest and find out how we can help you get your message out to the world, call 718 area code 713-2289 or email at savvycentralradio@gmail.com.